In this video, we're going to see how to resize an image with Thumbnailator, which is a dependency we can bring into our Spring Boot project by using Maven and pom.xml. This video is a continuation in our journey of making a microservice that can do heavy lifting processing offline, so that we can have one microservice which is responding to our users, and then we have another microservice which we can scale separately because it's doing a lot of CPU and memory intensive work. In a previous video, we built out the framework for this microservice and the topic that connects these two microservices together. So in this video, we're simply going to jump into this microservice and add only the logic required to resize the image. At the moment, we have this very simple Spring Boot application with just our startup application class, and then a photo processor that has the add component annotation and a Kafka listener annotation so that it is receiving photo locations that are deposited onto a specific Kafka topic. Now the trick is, it's receiving them as strings, so we need to first convert them to a type that Thumbnailator can understand a little bit better. And that type is a file. So we'll start by saying file equals new file. We'll pass in the path, and this essentially converts that string path into a file object. Now, a file object doesn't represent all of the data in the file, it simply represents the metadata of the file, things like its location. Next, we can narrow down the path where this is located by using paths. So if I want to get everything except for the file name, I'll simply say paths.get, and then we'll pass in the string path, and then we'll say .getParent. So in other words, get the directory that contains this file. Using Control-Alt-V, we can put our cursor on that getParent, and IntelliJ IDEA will take a look at that method, see what it returns. It will declare a variable of that return type, and then assign the result of that parent method call to that new variable. So you see, I've done a bit of this so far, and we can simply call this photo path. Now what if we want to get just the file name itself? There's an easy way to do that using that paths class again. Paths get path, and then get file name gets only the file name. Again, Control-Alt-V will assign that to a variable, and we'll simply call that file name. Next, let's make a separate directory for thumbnails. So we'll say photo path plus file.separator. This is an important one. What is file.separator? Well, keep in mind, I'm just going to do a little demo here. If you see Unix or Linux, it tends to use the slash that's on the question mark key in a US keyboard. I always confuse forward and backslash, so it's just easier for me to describe it that way. On the other hand, in Windows, we're more used to the slash that's above the enter key on a US keyboard, like so. So you see that the slashes differ based on Unix or Linux or Windows. And while the operating systems oftentimes do a good job of figuring this out for us, file.separator in the Java programming language says, just plug in whatever path separator or file separator is appropriate for the operating system that I'm on. So you see we can start with that root path where the photos live, and then file.separator, and then we can make a subdirectory of that called thumbnail. And then once again we can say file.separator, file name. So we're essentially replicating this same file, just one subdirectory down in a subdirectory called thumbnail, which we'll need to make in just a moment. But first, let's save this to a full string. Now as a string, we can make a file out of it, and this file represents where we are going to write the thumbnail, or in other words, the resized file. So file. Now we still need to bring the Thumbnailator stuff in here, but before I forget, let me go ahead and make that thumbnail subdirectory of our photo path. There we go. Now let's work on a bit of resizing. I've not yet included the Thumbnailator dependency in my POM. I'm going to see if IntelliJ will help me out. If not, I can go grab it myself. We'll say thumbnails. So you can see what's going on here. Thumbnails is a class of Thumbnailator. Then we say thumbnails of file, so we pass to it the file where the original size of the photo belongs. Then we say size 100, 100, which resizes it to 100 pixels by 100 pixels. And then to file means save all this to this new thumbnail file, which is same file name, just in a subdirectory of the main photos directory. Now we go here, Alt-Enter, and it doesn't know what this is. Well, many times IntelliJ IDEA will help us with Maven dependencies. In this case, I'm just going old school. I did a simple search for Thumbnailator Maven. I came upon this Maven repository, and that looks like just about what I want. So you see it's copied to clipboard. Now I can go back to my project, and while we can use a wizard to update this, we don't have to. So I can simply paste in that Maven dependency for Thumbnailator and then hit refresh. After the refresh occurs, you notice that the group ID, artifact, and version changed from red to black, which is good news. Let's go back to our photo processor and now Alt-Enter and notice that it takes care of that thumbnails class. But we did get a red line now, so what does the red line mean? Unhandled exception java.io.io exception. An IO exception is a checked exception, which means that it is one that we have to handle either by catching it or by rethrowing it. This is to be expected because to read this image, we have to go out to disk and outside of our Java virtual machine, and that tends to be the scenario where we'll find checked exceptions. And I'm glad it's giving me a checked exception here because, yeah, I need to think about what I'm going to do. In this case, throwing it up to the calling method is not going to help us because this is a small program and this essentially is the only method. We can't go back to the producer who put this message on the topic. We might not even know who that producer is. But have a look at this way to handle it. We'll go ahead and wrap with a try catch. And you notice that takes care of our red line because now where the exception could be thrown, we have a try catch around it. And if that exception is thrown, we're going to go to the catch block. Now, traditionally, if we don't understand try catches, we think, okay, I'm good, I took care of the red line. But did you really take care of the red line? Not really, because if this fails, all that's going to happen is something is going to get printed out to the console and no one's ever going to see it. Wouldn't it be nice if we could just take all of the failures and put them on a separate topic so that we could investigate them at our own pace when needed and we don't have to run back and look at a console? As luck would have it, Kafka has a property that's enabled by default called Auto Create Topics Enabled. And that means if I try to put something on a topic that does not exist, it will go ahead and create that topic for me. And this is a perfect case of that. We already have our Kafka listener annotation, so we know that Kafka is imported, which is going to save us a bit of work. What we need to do now is make a Kafka template. Import and add the auto-wired annotation. Next, let's add two more topics actually. Let's do one to say it was successful. So Kafka template.send photoOut means we finished processing it, and then we'll put the path on. The original path that we received, because that is essentially a unique identifier for this item that was added to photoIn and is now added to photoOut on a successful process. Let's now go down to the exception and let's add a new topic again, and this time we're going to say photoException. So think about try-catch blocks and look at lines number 29 through 35 closely. What you'll notice is that the photo path will be on one or the other of these topics, but never both. And here's why. If everything goes right, this line executes and we move to the next, which is this line, and then we completely skip the catch block. On the other hand, if there is an IO exception, which can only occur on line number 30, it's going to skip line number 31, jump right to the exception, and then it's going to put this message on the exception topic. You might see where we're going here. We can get a good idea of how our processing is going by taking a look at the photoIn topic, comparing it to the photoOut topic, and comparing it to the photoException topic, and that will also give us a good idea of our error rate. So here you can see, from a simple try-catch where you say, yeah, I've taken a red line, to something that's actually going to give us a whole bunch more really good information in just a couple more lines. As a matter of fact, one thing that would be good would be to put not only the path, but maybe that exception message. But we don't have to do that at the moment because we can at least go back in the logs and see what happened at this time. As a matter of fact, if there's one thing I would do, it would be adding true Spring logback logging to this class so that we can see that stuff. But nonetheless, I've started both the photo uploader microservice application and our photo processor microservice application in debug mode. Pause the video for a moment and I uploaded a photo. And at this point, you can see that our photo processor has picked it up. So let's walk through this at our own pace. I'm simply going to choose F8 to step over each line one at a time. We can see as it's assembling the path and the full file name. We'll see if this makes sense. So we have file name paul2. We have photo path, C users, administrator, yada yada, static photos. And then we have our thumbnail file. F8. And we step into the part that gets me a little bit nervous. This is where we're actually engaging Thumbnailator and telling it to resize. As expected, it does take a moment because it's dealing with a fairly large image, but take a look. It did move from line 30 to line number 31, which indicates that everything happened okay, or maybe that's a bit ambitious. Maybe we should just say we did not receive a checked exception. And at this point, we're ready to put this information on our brand new topic called photoOut. So I choose F8 one more time. And looks pretty good, so I'll choose F9 to tell it to continue. Thank you very much. We now have enough to take a look at the output and verify that it did indeed resize this image. So you see, we go down to the full path where the images are. You see there's this new thumbnail directory. And look, you see paul2 is 4 kilobytes. Now this might not necessarily be a good tell because it might expand it, but if I open it, you see sure enough it looks about 100 by 100. Let's go up and remember that file size 4 kilobytes. Let's look at the originally uploaded version. You see that one is 16 kilobytes. So sure enough, at this point, we have verified that we can resize an image with Thumbnailator by adding it to an existing Java project using Maven dependencies. As always, I hope this video was helpful and I look forward to reading your comments. Thank you.